All right, so I want to tell you just a little bit about myself and kind of what I hope to accomplish with this podcast. As you know, this is entitled the Radical Reading Podcast, where we radically read to radically live. And just a little bit about myself, I am an avid reader, as you can see, and as anybody that knows me. But even beyond that, my friends, my family, everybody close to me has been pressing me for several years, actually, to start a podcast or a blog or to start really doing some consistent video content. And I don't want to say I was struggling, but I just felt like, man, I didn't know what to do. Like, I wanted to do a podcast. I wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I wanted the content to be unique and original to me. I wanted to kind of be in my lane and within my passion point. And so because of that, I really stalled. I really didn't have an idea. I didn't know what direction to go into, what to do. And it really was in COVID when I had the opportunity to do a virtual speaking engagement for a religious organization that I did this study called Radical Reading. And it was about how to read the Bible. And after I did that, I was like, hold up. This is so me. This is it. This is exactly like who I am and what I do. Man, let me turn this into a podcast quick. Okay. And I am so excited. I immediately got to working on it and reaching out to a variety of different people and places for the podcast art, for the music, for ideas on how I should structure it, what I should do, what I should include and not include, the intro and outro video. And so I'm just so excited to really bring this to you. A little bit about me. All of my academic degrees are in English literature. My bachelor's is in English, my master's is in English, and I actually did about 4.5 years of doctoral work in English before making the decision to let that go for a variety of other passions and callings. And so I have, since the age of, I'd say probably 16, I fell in love with reading more. Actually, I don't think that's true. Since I was a kid, I've loved reading. My brother and I, we used to read the Redwall series by Brian Jacques together as kids. And whenever we would buy the books, he would buy a book and then I would buy the opposite book so that we could have the complete collection. I was a lover of the Nancy Drew series as a kid. I've always loved reading. I mean, my mother took my brother and I to the library, and she is an avid reader. Like, if you think anybody reads, my mother reads. But my mom is not big on buying books and having your own library. She's big on reading fiction and getting it in her hands and getting it out. So she would still goes to the library, and she would get anything from like 7 to 9 novels. And I'm telling you, you can have the books for 2-3 weeks. My mother would be done with all of them before her 2-week due date. There would be occasional times where she would need more time and she would get extensions from the library, what have you. But growing up in that space, man, the three of us, we just absolutely loved reading. And so we read together. We went to the library together. And so I truly believe that my mom kind of birthed this love for reading in me and my brother. And so I just have so many fond memories of, going to my brother's room and we would read together, or he would come to my room and we would read together. And that has not changed. Now, when I got to high school, I got introduced to my first kind of like work of African American literature. I got into a class called American ethnic lit, and I read Langston Hughes' poem Harlem and Lorraine Hansberry's play A Raisin in the Sun. I actually still have, I still have the original play that I read in high school. And one of the things that's so fascinating about that play is that it is kind of based on Langston Hughes' poem. And Langston Hughes, he says in Harlem, he says, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does it fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Does it sag like a heavy load? Or does it explode?" And Hansberry explores this idea with a family in the South Side of Chicago in her play A Raisin in the Sun. And for the first time, I felt like I was reading something that I could resonate with, that I could identify with. My dad's side of the family is from the South Side of Chicago. My mom's side of the family is from the West Side of Chicago. And so there were so many identifiers and qualifiers in the work that I just felt like I was reading about my own family. I was reading about things that had happened to me or to us potentially, or there were things within the story that I could see potentially reflecting. And so at that moment, I just fell in love with African American literature. And I began to ask myself the question, do we as Black people or any person of color, do they lack an interest in reading because they are not reading about themselves, because they're not having the opportunity to see themselves in the text? And I just fundamentally want to know, man, what if Black people started reading more texts by Black people? What if Latinos started reading more works by Latino authors? What if more individuals started reading works by Native American authors, and not even just people reading those works written by their own people group, but what if I am reading novels by Native Americans? What if I am reading novels by Eastern Indians, what if I start reading Japanese theology and Native American theology and Latino church history? What happens to me then as a person when I take on that kind of an intellectual journey? And so that's what I would really love for this podcast to be, is a space where that kind of diverse intellectual engagement can be had and can be done through the reading of books. And I also understand, though, that reading a lot of different material, particularly even sometimes dense material by yourself, is very difficult. And so one of the things that I hope to do with this space, because I do want to read a lot of stuff. Like Dr. Seuss, Yertle the Turtle is on the docket. Where is he? Dr. Seuss, Yertle the Turtle is on the document. Thanks for the suggestion, Andrew Francis. And the Communist Manifesto is on the docket. All right. Like, not to mention, these guys are on the docket. All right. So we've got a Filipino memoir. We've got Caste by Isabel Wilkinson. We've got Reading While Black by Esau McCulley. We've got White Too Long by Robert P. Jones. We've got The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. We've got Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. We've got Begin Again by Dr. Eddie Glaude. We've got Dark Princess by W.E.B. Du Bois. And as you can see, I've got plenty of other things on here in this room to dig in and dive in with you. And so I want to read everything from theory to theology to Bible. Let's go through the book of Romans together. Let's go through the book of Exodus together. Let's go through the book of Jeremiah together. I want to read nonfiction. I want to read biographies and autobiographies. I want to read speeches. I want to read essays. I want to read all kinds of things to really kind of not just stretch myself, but to help stretch you. And I know that reading a variety of works like that does require some assistance. And I think it goes a lot better when it happens in community. And so I would like to invite all of you to join me on Patreon. All right. I really want to create a radical reading community where we join together and where you've actually read these books in their entirety and you join me live and we talk about these books and we dive in and ask hard questions and figure out and wrestle and agree and disagree with the author and the things that are being presented. And we figure out, man, how can we take this? How does this look practically? How is this engaged? And so I just would like to invite you to the Patreon to become a radical reader. That is where you will get the opportunity to join me live and a variety of others in a virtual book club format. And my aim and hope is that even within that space, you as a member of the Patreon will be able to dialogue with myself and sometimes even the authors of the books that we will be reading. In addition to that, I also recognize that sometimes we need some resources. Sometimes we need tips. Sometimes we need behind the scenes background information. And so I want to provide you as members of the Patreon with those kinds of resources and that kind of intellectual support. And so there will be additional videos, additional content on the Patreon for those of you who want to dig even deeper into the lives and the stories behind these books and behind the authors of these books. So if you want everything from tips on how to read to a reading challenge calendar to being a part of the radical reading community, then you want to make sure that you join the Patreon. All right. So join the Patreon. And make sure that you are subscribed to the Radical Reading Podcast on YouTube. Make sure you are following on Instagram. And I will also make sure to let you guys know when the episodes become available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google and all those platforms as well. That way you can listen while you drive, you can listen while you cook, whatever you've got going on. But I want this to be a space where we can come together and truly challenge ourselves and one another to, I don't want to say embrace, but to truly kind of consider the life experiences, the thoughts, the ideas of people that we normally don't get access to, because a lot of what we read and a lot of the content, whether it's digital or in print, that we consume is very, very one-sided. And on this podcast, I believe that what makes the podcast radical is that we're reading everything from everybody. All right. We're going to be reading white European authors. We're going to be reading French theorists and political scientists. And we're going to read Black fiction and nonfiction. And we're going to read Filipino memoir and Japanese theology and Native American experience and Latino church history and Latino lived experience, Puerto Rican fiction, Latino theology, Native American. Literally, if I can get my hands on it, y'all, we're going to read it. Okay. Read it from everything from everybody. And I just hope that we can kind of take that kind of an intellectual journey together and grow and just become better and have an amazing time just diving into pages and reestablish an amazing love for learning and reading during this really, really interesting time. And because it's me, I'm going to connect it to what's going on. Okay. So we're not aimlessly reading. You are reading with a guide. And so I am going to help you kind of piece together what's going on in society. We are going to connect what is going on in the world with a variety of books that we have access to. So let's take this tour. Let's take this journey together and come to a deeper understanding about how we can radically live, and not just radically live on purpose for ourselves, but radically live so that we can radically transform our world to be the world that not only we imagine it to be, but a world that others have imagined and directed us on how to create it to be. A world that many of us intend for the world to be, and even maybe a world that God intended for it to be. So let's dive into these books together. Bible, all of it. And let's see, how can we radically read some of the craziest books out there? Let's read the Bible and the Quran side by side. Let's read the Torah, and let's understand how we can tikkun olam, repair the world together. All right, so welcome to the Radical Reading Podcast, where we radically read to radically live. I am your host, Claudia Allen, and I am excited. Okay, let's do this thing, y'all. I literally can't wait. This is just the first video, and I kind of want to do another one, but I know I can't. So, follow, subscribe, join the Patreon. Now, let's do this thing together. All right. Until next time.